I met a Gypsy.
Do you think we do too much in the sport in terms of training and riding, and or have the modern programs like kind of leveled out, do you think?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I like to say I think moto is catching up. I think the presence of team trainers is helping, and like science is slowly trickling into the sport, but I still feel like we're probably 5 to 10 years behind like a pro peloton or whatever. But I think the emphasis on like having to ride on a Monday, I think that is just kind of ridiculous in my mind. If you just look at the physiological stressors that you're undergoing on a Saturday, whether it's Supercross or motocross, then you're traveling back, so you're getting up at 4 a.m. on a plane, flying back Sunday, so it's not really the greatest rest day. And then you're being asked to ride again on Monday, which essentially is every time you ride the dirt bike, it's zone 5. You're 190, 200 heart rate, right, for a half hour to an hour. I just think that your nervous system and everything is not fully recovered yet, truly recovered. And I think that there's this emphasis on like having to ride the dirt bike 3 to 4 days a week. And I mean, even I see this at like some of the amateur facilities 4 or 5 days a week. They got to ride the dirt bike, and it's just like there's other things you can develop besides just your dirt bike skills. Like we were talking about your cardio fitness, your strength, your mobility. There's other things to develop other than just riding the dirt bike 5 days a week.
Yeah. So if you're you're working with some pro guys now, what's the rough bones of how you like to treat those guys? Like, would you say that workload is was a bit less than maybe what you would have done in early days in your career?
Yeah, it's tough because everybody's like at a different stage, like I think what I was doing, like a lot of the 3 hour bike rides or like running 10, 12 miles, like I'm telling you right now, like if I put a 12-mile run on like Garrett Marchbank's plan, he ain't doing that 12-mile run or he's not riding for the week, So that's where you kind of have to analyze, but you have to just be really smart with how you program off the dirt bike, because ultimately you can't be having them do like intervals in the morning and then going to a supercross track and trying to do 60 laps, at speed on a supercross track after they've done like 4x4 intervals, whether it's running or cycling, or even just like doing a heavy deadlift strength session in the morning and then they go ride the dirt bike. So you have to be smart in how you do that for sure. And yeah, like everybody's just at a different stage, so you have to really be careful how much volume you're programming or how much intensity and what part of the season you're in. If you're in the off season, it's kind of free game. I mean, I'm throwing a lot at you for sure, but in season it's tough. It's really tough to build in season.
Yeah. So when you say that we're a little bit behind from the science perspective, like magic wand waving, what you would like to do with a guy from say like November to December of, like a 13-month span, like what would you ideally like to do from that more analytical and scientific perspective?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think one low-hanging fruit would just be nutrition.
Yep.
And simply just the amount of carbs we're consuming. I think that I've seen a lot of moto guys get caught up in like these fad diets, carnivore, keto, low carb, or high carb, whatever it is, vegetarian, and like there's just a lot of, you could debunk that so easily. Like from a vegetarian perspective, like, okay, if you're not going to eat meat, well, you need to be aware of your B12, your iron, your essential amino acid levels. There's a lot of things you got to be worried about, You look at other sports, like, so there was a guy that actually just broke the Ironman bike record, Cam Wurf. Dude's an absolute savage, 41 years old, and he was consuming 200 grams of carbs an hour on the bike leg. 200 grams of carbs.
Seems like a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, I don't know, 7 bagels an hour or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so obviously.
And how is he doing that? Gels?
Well, and that's what's cool is like modern nutritional science has really caught up and allowed us to consume more grams of carbs per hour. And you're seeing a lot of records being broken in other sports just simply because they're fueling more than ever. Whereas in moto, like it's not uncommon for a guy to do 2 35-minute motos at an outdoor nationals and literally just have water, nothing else, no calories, 70 minutes of high intensity racing with water. you know. And so that's a really low-hanging fruit there that simply just starting to eat a little bit more appropriately, you know, makes a big difference.
And so what about, all right, let's stick to the nutrition for a second then. How do you eat? And like, how do you think about food in terms of like, what's the best diet and how serious? Because you're obviously still doing marathons and you're still training at a high level.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it's a loaded question. Yeah. Well, I feel like with food, it's tricky because you have your diehards, you know, people that like try carnivore or keto, and it's just like it really works for them and they're so convinced it works. But
so much of that's ego.
It is. And yeah, maybe, you know, there's so many stressors in the environment, like chemicals and stuff, and maybe eliminating food makes a big difference for some people. That doesn't mean you need to eliminate it for the rest of your life, though. You know, maybe after 2 to 3 months you could reintroduce it back in. But yeah, I was pretty regularly like gluten and dairy free for most of my career. I feel like when I was really honing in, gluten and dairy was the first thing to go. But I was also really well aware of like maybe shittier carbs, like crappier carbs, sometimes were necessary, you know, like a Coke or a Snickers bar at the right time, you know, like when you're zone 5 in an outdoor national moto and you're 190 heart rate for 35 minutes, like, dude, your furnace is burning hot, right? And it needs those shittier carbs. But then I really tried to get at least 95% of my food from whole foods, you know, like whole food sources. Like I didn't do a lot of protein powders. I tried to just do like chicken, beef, eggs, that sort of thing. Yeah, but I mean, definitely I'm big on like organic and grass-fed and trying to be really good with food quality, but then there's a time and a place where like we need those shitty carbs, that sugar, and then by all means, like, yeah, more the better.
And when are those times? Like when you're whenever you're getting into the zone 5 kind of area, you want to be like really loading up on as many like calorie dense carbs in a way.
Carb dense carbs, you know, staying away from protein, fat, and fiber would be a big thing, and really talking about like just carbs essentially, and fast burning carbs. Yeah, so like I've been kind of getting into this trend of like before a marathon, I'll try to do 450 to 500 grams of carbs the day before, kind of carbo loading. So a lot of people think of like, you know, let's have our pasta dinner the night before a race. Well, really you need to start like 24 hours plus before loading with carbs. You know, like ideally I try and shoot for 3 grams per pound of body weight of carbs. So for me that's about 500 grams. And essentially just trying to get that in, because that's what's fueling your muscles is glucose.
And so what are your go-to meals when it comes to that?
I mean, yeah, it could be pasta dinner, like, you know, rice and chicken, steak. Steak I usually try and stay away from the night before, just because it takes longer to digest. But yeah, your basic like a potato, sweet potato, rice, some meat source. I try and stay away from like fiber. That's one thing I've kind of learned, is like trying to stay away from fiber the day before, because that can mess your gut up.
Yeah. Okay.
You know.
Yeah. And then what about while you're doing the activity? Like do you do a lot of gels? Like what's the best way you've found to get those carbs?
Yeah, and so this kind of goes back to like whether you're doing intervals or you're riding the dirt bike, like you need to be having some fast burning fuel, you know, because you look at the heart rates, you know, and maybe if you look at a graph, you're always burning a percentage of like fat and carbs, but as your heart rate climbs, that needle moves towards
carbs.
Goes
more towards carbs.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's pretty basic. And so, yeah, I mean, for me, like I think so in the marathon I did just a couple days ago, I did
2 hours and 50
247. 247.
Hear that? 247 marathon.
Yeah.
247 marathon. No, you don't have to look anything up. I'm just 2 hours 47 minute marathon.
Oh, she's got the Google up.
No, yeah. she was ready to riff on some Google. What was your time?
No.
Come on. Nah, be proud of it. It's better than my marathon
hey, it's a
time.
Marathon.
5:58.
There we go.
Hey, man,
right.
I'm better than.
Goal was sub 6, so.
Hey, we met the goal.
Yeah.
Good.
I was actually on the phone to Alex before the marathon. We were talking about.
It was all fun.
Look, I'm pretty glad I cartwheeled down the hill at Glen Helen. It got me out of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's stayed firmly on the bucket list.
Yeah. You got to do it.
I know I need to. I need to get in that cave. I
Yeah.
need to get in that hurt locker. Yeah, so that marathon that you just did, what were you having?
Yeah, so I was aiming for. So one thing I've kind of shifted. This was my 8th marathon actually. So since the first one I did was like
8.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot.
You're next.
I know. Fuck. I'll have to get on trial training for that.
There we go. I'll hook you up. So there's a big emphasis on carbs, obviously, but then obviously we know electrolytes are important, but I've really been trying to hone in on how many grams of carbs I'm having per hour and then also how many milligrams of sodium I'm having per hour. And so for this last one, so when I did Boston about a month ago, I was pretty heavy on carbs, around 100 grams an hour, but then I was like, I realized the gel I was having, the SIS beta gel, only has 10 milligrams of sodium. And I'm not cramping per se, but I just am really running out of juice.
You're feeling it in the...
Yeah, I'm just running out of juice kind of. And I do feel like I'm on the edge of a cramp, like between miles 20 to 26. And so for this last marathon, I bumped to a gel. It's called Never Second, and it has 200 milligrams of sodium per gel. And that was a game changer, dude.
Really?
I'm telling you. So I bumped it from about, honestly, 20 to 30 milligrams of sodium per hour to like about 1,200 milligrams of sodium per hour, and that helped a lot for sure. So I think for this last marathon, I was around 90 grams of carbs an hour. I had a gel every 3 miles, and then I consumed 2,400 milligrams of sodium in that time.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.